This week on NBA G League Takeover, the playoffs are on the horizon. Which teams have already clinched? Plus, 3 former G League Ignite studs go off. And later, a March Madness legend is making the most of his moment with the Long Island Nets. All that and more coming up right now on NBA G League Takeover.
This is NBA G League Takeover, sponsored by Kumho Tire.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to NBA G League Takeover. Mike Davis here with our G League insider, Gianna Hearn. Gianna, great to see you. Great show today. A lot of big stuff to get into. We're heading into the last week of action here for the G League. So 2 teams have clinched so far, G. It's the Salt Lake City Stars and the Maine Celtics. A few should be coming down the pike a little bit in a few games with a lot of stuff happening this last week of action. But tell us, not a lot of surprise here from Salt Lake City and the Maine Celtics, 2 teams with a lot of star power and a lot of dominance these past few games and weeks and months.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. It wasn't a surprise for the East and West, these 2 teams, to be the ones that had clinched first in each of them. Obviously, the Maine Celtics will start there. Now, they weren't the first to clinch, Salt Lake was, but we're starting there because, of course, they have J.D. Davison, who we said is probably the leader in MVP voting. We don't know that for sure, but we can guess based off his performance and his numbers. He's averaging 25.3 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, 7.4 assists. So he's 3rd in points per game in the league, and he's 4th in assists per game. But just if you look at his big performances and you look at the team's record, that's why I would say he would be leading an MVP. So he's a two-way. But they also have Drew Peterson, who's a two-way, who's averaging 19 points a game, 6 rebounds, almost 6 assists. And it's just the dynamic duo of them having two-way players, plus the core players that are just G League players on that team. They've really come together, and they're very sound. So I would say they're a front runner, in my opinion, as those that win. But when we look over at the Salt Lake City Stars, they also have star power. I mean, we would be remiss not to mention Isaiah Thomas, but I'm going to start with Oscar Tshiebwe because, you know, Isaiah Thomas is a former NBA player, so they're in a little different category. But Oscar Tshiebwe has been grinding out in the G League the last few seasons and has been continuing to prove why maybe he doesn't even need to be in the G League anymore. He's leading in rebounds. He actually averages 1 rebound more than he does points per game. So he averages 17 points per game, and he averages 18 rebounds per game. So I think when you have a guy that's that dominant with the rebounds, and then they also have Elijah Harkless, who's averaging 26.9 points per game. And then as a team, they have 7 players in double figures on the Salt Lake City Stars team. So I know I said like Maine is a front runner for me as who might be the champs this year. But Salt Lake City, they're very deep, and they have a lot of guys who can get you buckets on any given moment.
Yeah, Tshiebwe, a former Rookie of the Year in the G League. They have a lot of star power, but yes, no surprises there. Now, we do have to talk about one thing before we get into a couple guys who are G Leaguers who got full contracts. Let's talk about Bronny James. I mean, honestly, you know, the narrative at the beginning of the season when we were doing our first shows for the season for NBA G League Takeover, it was like, wow, Bronny James is not showing us enough, right? Well, now he even has the demeanor of King James in a lot of these interviews. He's growing up quick. He doesn't look like a child so much anymore. He's been having good games in the NBA, but now he's starting to dominate in the G. 39 points the other night, 7 rebounds, 67% from the field. Bronny doing this all against the Santa Cruz Warriors, a team you know well, G. So, I mean, Bronny, let's talk about this. 39 points, a career high. Is Bronny James starting to become a little bit more like King James?
I don't know if we'll give him Prince, or King, but maybe we can give him Prince, okay? This is his 3rd 30-point outing of the season. So it's not a fluke when he's hitting it. That's what that's telling me, is that he's consistently stringing together big outings. And I think the difference that we're seeing is early on in the beginning of the season, he shared that he was struggling with some mental health. It could be from coming back from the injury or coming back from a surgery, all those different things. But I think we're seeing a different mentality within him. So when you talk about King James, he's known for his mentality and how he does things. And I think Bronny just needed that time. I've always said it from the beginning of the season that I wasn't worried about him, that people were too harsh on him just because of who his father was. Like no other rookie are we saying that comes in like that.
Yeah.
Are we putting the same expectations? Now there are expectations, you know, if you're high draft picks, he was a 2nd rounder. But I think we're seeing the consistency, but we're also seeing his mentality shift
Yeah.
to just being more healthy in that area.
And to that point, G, and I think you're 100% right, and this is what I want to mention. I think King James coming out of St. Vincent, being on the cover of Sports Illustrated, being the guy who kind of was just crowned king before he even entered the NBA, he didn't have a lot of strife. Kobe always had a little bit more chip on his shoulder. We know those stories. We're going to be talking about Kobe a little bit later in the show today. To me, what I'm liking about Bronny is kind of the chippiness that he has to his personality, and maybe the distinct difference between him and his father is, in fact, yes, there's been obstacles. It's been a little of a harsher road, a tougher road to get to where he's going to ultimately end up. But maybe he's going to have a little bit more of that Kobe in him and perhaps be a little bit different. One of the things that a lot of detractors, there's not a lot of things you can say negative about LeBron James. The guy is tremendous at his age, the way he's been able to keep up his body, his performance. But the one thing people always say is he doesn't have that killer instinct. He doesn't have that chip. It looks like Bronny might have that chip, and there's a lot of good reason why. So I'm excited to see what happens there. But we have a little bit more time here in the A block, G. Let's talk about this. So two guys, very exciting stuff. We got to congratulate Isaac Jones, 24 years old, 6'9", power forward center, with the Stockton Kings this season, averaging a little over 20 points a game. He was undrafted out of Wash State, but now he signs a deal with a standard deal with the Sacramento Kings. So this means, G, tell us, break it down, but it really means that he's going to be able to play in the play-in, and if the Kings think they're going to be able to do some stuff in the playoffs.
Yeah, Isaac Jones, I mean, going undrafted and then getting a two-way with the Sacramento Kings, it's really been a very awesome story. If you watch him from Summer League with the Kings, he kind of peaked and people were like, oh, okay, he's very exciting. And then he just kept dominating in the G League. And then when they pulled him up and brought him to Sacramento in November and December, he was showing out coming off of the bench. And so it's been, I think, a really good story arc for him because he's someone that has shown at every level he continues to fight and he continues to produce. And really, he no longer fits in the G League, averaging, you said it, 20.9 points, 10 rebounds in Stockton, but he's played 31 games with the big team. And what happened with him is only 50 games can you be available as a two-way player for the NBA team. And at that point, they need to decide if they're going to put you on a standard deal because you can't be available for more than 50 games. So they had that against them for the Kings, plus playoffs are coming. And if you're a two-way player, you cannot play in playoffs. So they had a decision to make. Right. And what did they do? They gave him a 2-year deal, which is a little different than the next guy we're going to talk about. But 2 years means, you know what, we're not just signing you through the rest of the season. We're giving you a little bit more time because they might have maybe some long-term goals that they want to see if he can really fit with Sacramento, since he has come off the bench and been a producer. Yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting for him to see how this all shakes out because Sacramento is plagued with injuries. They're going to need someone. Will he be that guy that kind of shows out and we're like, hey, why wasn't he there all along?
Yeah, I like to see it. Congratulations to Isaac Jones. Next up, another guy we talk about frequently here on the show, Kevin Knox, former top 10 draft pick in the 2018 draft. He was selected by the Knicks, but now he's in that whole Golden State tree. He's been playing with Santa Cruz a little bit, but now Golden State Warriors signed him to a deal for the rest of the year. He had two 10-day contracts, something we've spoken about a lot here on NBA G League Takeover. So he got that first 10-day, the second 10-day. Now he's going to be with the team for the rest of the year, and they're really, looking up since the acquisition of Jimmy Buckets, how they're playing. So a guy who's been averaging 25 points a game in the G League is now coming off the bench and doing a lot of good stuff with the Warriors. And this was a guy last year with the Pistons. He just didn't look like he had the same juice. And all of a sudden, Kevin Knox could be a big contributor on a team that's trying to make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, so you mentioned it. I said the difference between Isaac and Kevin is that Kevin was not a two-way player. Now, he did shine in Summer League, but he was a standard G League player, and then they brought him up for the 10-day, and he had 2, and now they're signing him for the rest of the season. So not 2-year deal or anything like that, but you got the rest of the season, and you got playoffs. He's available to play in the playoffs. But Kevin Knox, the thing about him is he has size and he has talent. Now, what people question about him is, does he have that grit? We talked about mentality with Bronny and those type of things. They want to see someone kind of match the size and the intensity. And so I don't think we saw that in Detroit. Now, when you have someone like Draymond Green and the other big personalities on the Warriors, I think that is going to bring that out of Kevin. Yeah. We might get the best out of Knox.
I love that. It's a great point right there. And guess what? Speaking of mentality, coming up, we're talking to two Guys, well, we're hearing from one of our people with the best mentality. That's Jeffrey Key. And of course, the legendary Kobe Bryant. We got some good stories, some anecdotes about Kobe Bryant that are coming up next here on NBA G League Takeover.
This is NBA G League Takeover, sponsored by Kumho Tire.
All right, welcome back to NBA G League Takeover. Now we're going to get a little clip. We're going to hear something from Certified G's and Jeffrey Key. Let's take a quick listen.
Talk about the story about you meeting Kobe and then the advice that he gave you.
The real first memory I have of me and Kobe, it was they were playing at Madison Square Garden when he was on the Lakers. And my dad took me to New York to his hotel. And I was all nervous and shy. And he come here, nephew. He just dabs me up. He's like, I'm gonna give you some advice. He's like, shoot all the basketball every time you touch him. He was like, we'll teach you how to pass later. And then every time I would see him, he would ask me, he would be like, you still follow my advice? He's like, I'm watching. He was like, you better be following my advice.
Did you take that advice?
I definitely took that advice with a grain of salt.
Why were you nervous to meet Kobe?
I mean, man, he's just greatness, just all-time great. My favorite players were those Piston players growing up, and then it was Carmelo Anthony and then Kobe Bryant. Those are my role models, and I just love watching them play basketball.
Oh, there's always so many great nuggets when it comes to Jeffrey Key and Certified G. So Ron Harper Jr. is talking about the advice he got from Kobe. We all remember Ron Harper. He was the point guard, the quarterback for those MJ teams with the Bulls, with Kobe and the Lakers. And of course, this is a story about, Ron Harper Jr. meeting Kobe, one of his idols, and Kobe's like, never pass the ball. Once you get the ball, just shoot. Listen, G, probably not the greatest advice, but when you're Kobe Bryant, you're allowed to do whatever you want to do, right?
Exactly. I think it was interesting. Obviously, Ron Harper Jr. said, I took it with a grain of salt because he also had to realize he wasn't Kobe. So
right.
You're going to have to pass the ball sometimes. But I think that mentality, we keep talking about mentality on the show, is what Kobe probably wanted to impart on him is don't be afraid. Attack
right.
at all times. Be that dude.
100%.
So that's a really good anecdote that we heard for Jeffrey Key. But also I want to shout out Jeff Key for getting that Gatorade sponsorship for Certified G's.
I know. I saw he had all the flavors there.
Send them our way.
Send me the lemon lime and anything with the blue. Also, I like the grape as well. Riptide Rush, I believe they call it. All right, guys. Coming up next, we're talking about 3 former G League Ignite guys that are really balling out. It's exciting stuff. We all love the former alums from the G League Ignite, so we're going to talk about that after these words.
This is NBA G League Takeover, sponsored by Kumho Tire.
All right, now it's time for Now in the NBA, 2 former G League Ignite studs who are really balling out at the NBA level in the association. We got to talk about Modest Buzelis and Ron Holland. Let's first talk about Modest because, I think about this guy daily because I have a bobblehead of Modest on my desk.
You wanted that so bad last season.
I really did. He's just my boy. I love this guy so much. Listen, the dude really has had an interesting season. He played a little bit with the Windy City Bulls at times, but he's really been showing out with the Chicago Bulls. The other night, he had a career-high 31 points, 12 for 18 from the field, 5 for 10 from three-point in just 29 minutes of play. He has 9 games over 15 points this season. So Modest is a guy, listen, he has just the archetype, the body type that you want for the NBA and where we're at now in the league. He was drafted 11th overall this season. So Modest and his development, how impressed are you with him? Because we already knew he had the personality. He has the mentality, G. But now he's really showing out, and a rookie to be dropping 31, he's looking good for a team that really needs some juice.
Yeah, not only dropping 31, but I loved his little shimmy and his footwork against Luka Doncic. I mean, if you're going to kind of have not a coming out party because people know who he is, but, coming up against big stars, I thought that was one of my favorite highlights. But what I think about him is he has met expectations. To me, Modest has not exceeded expectations, but he's met them, which I think is a good thing. He's done what he needed to do. But with that performance, I think what he has shown is that he could be a core player for the Bulls. Not a franchise player, but a core player. So he could be that second or third piece. And I think the Bulls are looking for that. And so I think what Modest needs to do is continue to show that type of potential on a consistent basis. So next season will be really important. Does he carry on with performances like this? And if he does that consistently, I'm rooting for Modest to be a core player, because I think, like you said, his framework, what he has built in him, makes it not easy, but makes it easier for someone to have that. And then with everything else he has, he's just, I think, the whole package. And so I can't wait to see what he has next year in line for him. But 31 points, my hat's off to him.
Yeah. And I think, to me, my philosophy on Modest, I think this is a guy who really could be the second or third best player on a championship team. I think that's his
championship
ceiling.
team.
That's what I really think. The second or third guy. Now, you look at pictures of NBA rooks in their initial season, these guys don't fill out till for a few years when they're that young. So I think Modest still is going to add to his frame. He's going to get more physical, and I think the athleticism's already there, so I'm excited about that. But here's what's so crazy. So Ron Holland, G, this is a guy who is the belle of the ball. Everybody was talking about Ron Holland a year ago, right? This was the guy, people were projecting him out as number 1 overall in mock drafts.
We talked about him a lot.
We talked about him all the time. Then his showing with the G League was up and down, right? He always had a great defensive acumen. He played with a lot of heart and a lot of grit, but the 3-point shooting, some of the scoring, it was off the mark. But now Ron Holland has really created a role as a rookie for a Detroit Pistons team that is a lot better than people anticipated. And now Detroit has some stuff brewing there between him and Cade Cunningham and all the good things they're doing. Ron Holland the other night, 26 points. And get this, G, he made history, Ron Holland, as the first teenager in NBA history to have 25, 5, and 5 in a game with 0 turnovers. And this is something he struggled with a lot here in Henderson, Nevada, when he was playing with the G League Ignite. So for a teenager to have his career high 26 points plus that first teenager stat line of 26, 5, and 5 with 0 turnovers, gee, he's really developing for the 5th overall draft pick for the Detroit Pistons.
Mike, don't steal my thunder. The 0 turnovers was what I wanted to point out. I mean, it's ridiculous because, as you mentioned, he struggled with turnovers. They wanted to corral him in because he was a little bit wild, and that would lead to turnovers. Yes, he was explosive and exciting. We love that about Ron. But we're seeing some flashes of maturing in Ron, which is what you want to see. What I said about Modest is that he met expectations for me. Ron, in this particular performance, exceeded expectations because I thought it would take a little bit more time to kind of carve out what Ron would be, because he's kind of like that wild stallion. It's hard to tame those. Right. And you want someone with his wildness. I think that makes exciting players. And you do see it with his handle, his dribbling. It's not so contained. He kind of, it seems to me like it needs to be more polished, but he's still Ron, but he's maturing. And so this was a really good performance. And in similar ways to Modest, both these two guys have to consistently show they can do this. And then I think they'll have a long career in the NBA.
I think Ron, I mean, I feel like the theme of the show today, if I was teaching, if I was an academic, if I was a professor and I had some elbow pads on here, I feel like what we'd be talking about is the theme of today's class, boys and girls, is mentality. And Ron is the guy that has that perfect mentality for a city like Detroit, a team with a rich history of the bad boys and being rough, and they play games hard, man. I mean, I love watching what the Pistons are doing, and he's a big part of this rebirth in Detroit and Motown. So hats off to our two guys, Modest and Ron, 11th overall and 5th overall draft picks last year. Real quickly, before we leave for a commercial break, G, let's just give a shout out to another guy, a former G League Ignite alum, Cheery Darlin. Love this guy, fascinating guy, 6'8" forward. He, didn't get as much playing time, had some injury issues when he was here in Henderson, Nevada, but he's now playing with the Delaware Bluecoats, the G League team affiliated with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, Darlin had a career high 28 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and a career high in those assists as well. So he did this all, G, against the Maine Celtics. It's not like a team that we haven't spoken about and isn't doing so hot. So for Darlin to have a career high as a guy who, you know, we're going to be talking about in later shows because of his draft eligibility. Tell us what you think about him. Does a game like this perhaps, you know, raise his draft stock a little bit?
I mean, he's going to need more games like this. And he had less time playing with Team Ignite and didn't have all the eyes on him. And then this year, you know, he was traded teams. And so it's kind of been a whirlwind for him. But over the last 5 games, he's averaged 16.4 points per game when his overall average for the season is 10.8. So I think now is the time. If he's going to peak, it's going to be now because the draft is coming upon us and he wants to get drafted. So you know what? I think this is a good look for Terry Dawson.
Yeah, very exciting stuff for him. He's got such a bright personality. He's a quirky dude. So I'm excited for him to see what happens with him coming up. Guys, after a short break, G is going to be revealing her G of the week. Plus, there might be some synergy there with Player of the Week in the G League. So stick around. We got more G League Takeover coming up next.
This is NBA G League Takeover, sponsored by Kumho Tire.
It's the greatest time of year for basketball fans, March Madness. Around this time of year, I'm always thinking about the Kevin Pittsnoggles, the Doug Edderts, the Jack Golkes, Adam Morrison. Even Steph Curry was, you know, a March Madness hero. But there is a guy who we all remember fondly from Gonzaga who is now in the G League, and he's on fire, G, and this is part of your G of the week. Give us the big reveal.
Well, the Long Island Nets have a star in Drew Timme. Not only was he a star in college, but he just had a 50-point game, and he had the overtime game winner. So Drew Timme's ridiculous. We've wanted to talk about him on the show a few times, and then there's always been something else, but you have to give him props when props is due. And not only that, he's player of the week, and it makes sense. We pick someone like this, and then we see it come out, and we're like, hey, we must be on the right track.
Yes, he's had some big-time games, and you know what? He's just a March performer, you know, so it makes sense that this guy should be player of the week in March. G, great stuff this time around. I'm Mike Davis for Gianna Hearn. We'll see you next time here in the Den at Fox 5 Studios for NBA G League Takeover.